Hi, and welcome to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson from OTG Capital. We broadcast locally on Radio Northern Beaches and around Australia on the Community Radio Network. Always a pleasure to have your company. And at the microphone, we welcome back from Wise Girls Money Magic, Philippa Hunt. Philippa, how are you?
Good. Beginning of the year, we're almost into March.
It went by very, very quickly. And given that this is a leap year, I read with great interest, just as a total diversion, because we have this extra day, it's going to potentially save the economy from being in a technical recession. So the government has an extra day. I read this, seriously, the government has an extra day to make up some revenue so that technically the incomings will beat the outgoings by just slightly enough to avoid being in a technical
recession where we've been what is it, 2 quarters, or is it 3 quarters in negative
pretty
growth?
Close, very, very close. But anyway,
you know what? One more interest rate hike, and I think we will be.
Well, it could be, but I think we can talk interest rates a bit later on in the show. But I think it's a telling sign. All the reading that I do, given what's happening in the United States, and when you see what's happening with the Fed and their unemployment and inflation, it's unlikely. And I certainly see some stability in that space, which, again, as a fund manager in that space, I'm sitting there rejoicing, going, great, because we've had far too much volatility. Anyway, we digress. Today, Philippa, I wanted you to come on the show because you and I saw exactly the same article about budgeting, and almost it was like mental telepathy, ladies and gentlemen, because I sent this email off to Philippa and she said, I saw that same article, and we were talking about today budgeting. Okay, now budgeting to me is near and dear to my heart because it's the foundation of everything that goes right and everything that goes wrong, not just with big corporations, but also with single people and their day-to-day running of a family budget, and mum and dads, and everybody's day-to-day ins and outs all depend on making sure they do budgets. And Pip, you saw this article. What really caught your eye about the article?
How timely
it is, isn't it?
You sent that email just as I clicked off it.
Yeah,
and I just thought, well, with the cost of living, people are trying to find savings anywhere they can. And it's called survival. And where 2 years ago they never had to think about it because they had plenty of money and they were in accommodation that they could afford, either paying a mortgage or renting. Now everyone's scratching to survive except for the top end. So I think budgeting has become something more than just survival. It's about staying on top of. And so it was a very interesting article. It was very straightforward and quite simple to read. And I have to say that is the foundation module of my own Wise Girls Money Academy course. And that's the reason.
And hence the reason I thought it'd be really good to have you on the show to talk about it, because you are talking to predominantly women that are in dire straits, usually, unfortunately, when they come to you. I've sent people your way that thankfully haven't always been in that situation. But I think it comes back to the old adage when you're talking about budgeting. It's that old thing about project management. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And working out your money on a daily, weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis is no different. It really isn't. Now, you and I constantly talk about money smart, and ladies and gents, I'm here to tell you we're going to be talking about it again today, because this article that we found in the New Daily links to the Money Smart website, and I always love looking at it. And I clicked on this link, and I've got to tell you, it's a gold mine. It's a really, really nice resource. Now, I'm actually going to, Philippa, you and I are going to actually go through it today, because when you look at the article, they talk about starting a budget and, the story of your financial life. And some people might look at this and think, oh, my God, it's a hopeless case. But there's some really, really good tips here, but I would direct you, and we'll put this link in the in our blog, and I guess Philippa, you blog this as well on your own website, but we'll put the link up to Money Smart. And I think it also conjures me, we have people coming on, we have Justin Bott from Centrelink and Services Australia comes on and talks about pensions and what Centrelink does. I might actually hit up Money Smart and see if we can get somebody from them to come on the show as well, because their stuff's really, really good. But first up, I looked at, there's two ways of being able to use their budget. One's actually a downloadable spreadsheet, and the other one you can actually do on the internet. So you can actually do it off their site. And so the first thing that they start looking at, and again, there's a lot of words there potentially, but I think it's well worth having a look at. They've done, I think, a high level of breakdown. So Pip, do you want to take the listeners through some of that?
Yes, they've got, I might add here, spreadsheets are a very useful tool if you know how to use them.
Good point.
That's the first thing. A lot of people are scared by putting numbers out on a spreadsheet like that. They'd rather get a piece of paper. But it doesn't matter however you do it. What you do is you get your bank statement or your credit card statement, and you tick off everything that you always spend. And so it's all anything to do with your food, cost of living to literally exist, and then have a look at the things that you buy on impulse if that's what you do. And so what you're also trying to do, and the first, if it's to the point where you're going past survival, where you're just trying to pay your bills and stay afloat, that's one goal. Also, the motivation to budget is the driver, and that's what this article covers off. So if you're saving, and you can save, and you have a goal that you need to save for, now it might be the quarterly payments of your rates, or there are quarterly payments that must be met, that is a goal. So you can set up the amount of money that needs to be, as my mum used to do when cash was the only thing they had back then. She'd set it up. So she'd put a certain amount each fortnight aside into the quarterly jar, so that when all the bills fell due in the quarter, she had the money set up there to pay them. So you can do the same with your bank accounts. You set up a sub account, so you have your quarterly bills. Every time you get paid, you put a certain amount into the quarterly bill account so that that money is there ready to pay. So that's a simple goal. If you're saving for something more than that, like a home deposit or a wedding or a holiday or something that is over and above survival, then that is also a reason to budget, because you've got to set aside your savings and force yourself to live off the rest. And that's important, because people don't think of putting savings first. They put whatever's last that they've got left over into their savings.
Yes.
So if you work out that you can afford to save, I don't know, $100 a month over and above all your bills, quarterly bills, annual bills, because you know when they come in, they're quite a large amount. So you've got your weekly bills, fortnightly, such as rent, monthly, such as electricity, quarterly, such as rates, car registration, which can be half yearly or yearly. So you work out the timing of these bills. That's your first goal. Then you split up those expenses. Of course, you know this is your large yearly budget. You know when they are coming in. And so you plot them on a calendar. So all you're trying to do is divvy up how much you get all the time into the respective little buckets. And I like to call them buckets because one's annual bucket, one's a quarterly bucket, one's a fortnightly bucket. And that way you're distributing, or what we call applying, your funds that you've got to the different buckets.
And whether they're real buckets or virtual, it doesn't really matter. But I think the compartmentalization of those expenses, ins and outs, is really vitally important.
Well, the funny thing is a lot of people are actually taking all their payout in cash and literally sticking it into buckets and jars, like my mum used to. And or because the other thing is that you can use bank accounts, just sub accounts, and call them whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And then if you are saving for something like a holiday, or whatever the goal is, have a separate bucket. Call it that. Don't call your accounts rainy day money, or you'll end up with rainy days that will cause you to spend the money. So put a positive name on your account, and so you're grateful then for what money you've got that you can save. So it becomes a positive thing. Now, I can tell you, the more emotionally attached a woman in particular is to the outcome of that goal, they'll do whatever it takes to save for it. So if it's going to be a wedding, a home deposit, a holiday, or whatever the emotional attachment to that goal is, then that's a very strong driver, which is what this article says, because the goal is the driver to get you to save in the first place. So once you've listed everything and you look at your statement and think, do you really need to buy all that stuff? Then that what they says in the article there, it just says there'll come a time when you clean out stuff. Like, why do you have so many subscriptions when you don't use them?
Yeah, I want to talk about streaming services and subscriptions and Patreons and the like, because these are the kind of creepy, uppy kind of expenses that you don't realise until you get your monthly statements, and all of a sudden you're scratching your head going, where did all that go?
Exactly. Now, it was an interesting thing many years ago, and I first taught the Wise Girls Money course, and this is absolutely true. It was a very important moment for me in teaching, and I asked the group of women who I all knew they're Myers-Briggs type, have you ever taken $50 out of the ATM, because that's what it gives you, and then at the end of the day, and you go and buy whatever you need, look in your wallet and think, where did all that go? And one woman literally clapped her hand over her chest and said, oh, that happened to me yesterday. Listen to the language. It happened to me. Another woman whom I knew was a scientist and writes everything down, swung around and said to this woman, what do you mean you don't know where it went? Didn't you keep the receipts? Why didn't you put on your credit card so you can get the statement and look at it and get your points? And then she said, don't you have a budget? And this other woman just stared at her because it wasn't in her temperament.
It wasn't in her language either. It wasn't in her
No.
language. It wasn't in her language.
And that's my whole point.
So look, we're at
everybody gets yourself a budget.
Yeah, so we're at that point right now. We're about halfway, Philippa. Sorry to cut you short. We need to take a break because we've gone overtime a few times in the last few weeks, and my editor's come back and kicked me a little bit. So we're at our halftime break. You're here on Dollars and Making Sense. We're going to go for a short break, and we'll be back with you in just a moment. Hi, and thank you for listening to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly radio program about finance, money, and investing on Radio Northern Beaches and nationally on the Community Radio Network around Australia. The views, comments, and opinions aired during our program should not be construed or viewed as financial advice. Any commentary is general advice only and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. You should consider whether the advice is suitable for you and your personal circumstances. If in doubt, you should contact an authorised licensed financial planner. We welcome questions and feedback, and you can get in touch with us via our blog, social media channels, or email. Please search for Dollars and Making Sense in your favourite podcast platform, or check out our blog at otgcapital.com.au/blog. Hi, and welcome back to Dollars and Making Sense, a weekly show about finance, money, and investing. I'm your host, Ray Treverson, and at the microphone this week, Philippa Hunt from Wise Girls Money. We are talking budgeting and what it takes to actually get one up and running. So we're going to be referring to a really, really good resource that's free. It's from moneysmart.gov.au. And before we went to the break, Philippa, we were talking about these little hidden things that happen to us. They're called credit cards, and I still see it at the moment. People don't collect receipts, and therefore they don't reconcile their credit card statements. This pay wave of doing things, it's just this funny stuff that disappears into the ether, yet it's real money. How do we get around this?
Well, there again, it comes down to temperament and generational. The pay wave thing's a real trap because you don't know how much you're spending. I've seen people spend waving their watch over the pay terminal. They've got no clue what money feels like anymore, and the banks are doing their best to get rid of cash, which doesn't help the country folk who can't pay online because they don't have adequate internet reception. And so the psychology around spending is become dripping it out of your savings account. So people know they have to budget, but I was talking about temperament. Some people are given to tracking and they enjoy the whole process of it, but the intuitives and the creatives hate it with a passion.
Mm.
It's not in their favourite thing that they love to do. They find it very restrictive. And unless there is a dire straits situation in their life that forces them to budget, as soon as that's over, they go back to spending. And so for those people who hate budgeting, that hate tracking their expenses, an easier way to do it would be to get a certain amount of money, put it in an account that you can't touch. So that's your savings, whatever that is. Now, that savings is a buffer in case there's an emergency. The other way you can do it, if you are going to use your credit card and you've got a mortgage and an offset account, then that's the other way of doing it, where it's cleared every month, but at least you can track and you've got statements to prove what you've spent. For those of us,
that's the way I do it, actually. So
yes, yeah. Other people have a debit card and they use that because it comes directly out of the account and they're not paying any interest on it because it's a savings account. So you can then monitor how much you're spending by how much is left.
And it's a fascinating thing when we talk about budgeting, Philippa, because being a fund manager, one of the things that I talk to my client investors and also just people that I catch up with every day is that you've got to also consider the cost of money. And people look at me very strangely. What are you talking about, the cost of money? Well, when you use somebody else's money, ladies and gentlemen, you're paying for it. And so when the bank very kindly gives you a credit card, you've got to read the fine print because you're paying 22 to 24% for that money. Now, back in the days when interest rates were down around the low 3s and 4s, that's ridiculous. Guess what? Those credit card rates haven't changed one iota, and so people are still using very, very expensive money to do day-by-day things. And so when we're trying to balance budgets, these are one of the very big tricks. Philippa, I wanted to move on. One of the things that this time of the year comes across my desk is the big ticket items like home and contents insurance. And when you're trying to budget for that, I found a very interesting trend that's happening now. My previous home and buildings content combined went up 48% from last year. Now, I'm not alone, it turns out, because doing my reading, because I went back to the internet and started finding out, am I alone? I'm far from alone.
Well, industry's gone up, Ray, because of floods and fire.
Floods and fire is one thing, but there's again, there's very little correlation to CPI here. There's certainly a certain amount of price hacking that's occurring that's certainly scratching my head. But we found the variation in premiums quite extreme, but we also found some innovation that I wanted to talk to you about. We were approached, we approached a company and said, look, your rates are pretty good. Why are they lower? And what they do is they send out smart monitors to your home. And so what they now do is that they put a little device in your home. It measures temperature, it measures water flow, it measures things like sound, like a smoke alarm. And so they then relay this information back to base. And I thought, that's pretty cool. And by installing these smart monitors, they then offered me another 9% on discount on my yearly premium. So I thought, big tick in the box for that one. The other thing that I found, which is the first one that I've seen, we don't mention trade names, but they also offered monthly payments at no extra cost. Wow. Normally when you go monthly, they slab on it, 10, 12, 15% premium for doing so. And when the young lady on the call was telling me about it, I went, yeah, I've heard that one before. She says, no, we don't charge you any extra. And I thought, beauty, I've got 12 payments now. And we're talking, solid 4 figures, to insure this house with its contents. all of a sudden I'm thinking, beauty, I can stage this over 12 months. And so,
You
ladies and
email
gentlemen,
me the link, please, Ray.
I will, but I can't mention names.
No, I understand that.
But I thought the use of smart monitors, because we've all heard of smoke alarms, but now the insurers are going out there and saying, hey, if we can link a smart monitoring system to your smoke alarms, to your burglar alarm, to your door sensors, to your temperature sensors, that gives us confidence in saying, hey, guess what? We're going to reduce the risk, because most people that buy contents obviously will do so for theft, but contents are very different these days to back in 20, 30 years ago. But it's primary loss of your main residence, and that's primarily fire. So the premiums to repair a window pane, you don't bother claiming insurance. So you primarily insure your house for total loss.
Yes.
And so I looked at this and I went, wow, this is great. The cost of the premium was easily half of what I was being quoted, and then further reduced, and the risk is also reduced as well. Great story. Loved it.
Could you get that over to me, please?
I will. And if I will only offer this if people contact me, because again, we're on community radio. And so look, one of the things I also wanted to highlight, when people go out shopping, and this is something that my wife noticed when we first started dating and living together, I always looked at the price per kilo of items.
So do I.
And so, ladies and gents, look when you go grocery shopping, because
on the ticket.
Under the ticket now, it's by law, they've got to give you a price per kilo, and so you can do your cost comparisons. I had to laugh. I don't know if you saw this particular line, Philippa, but this gentleman says, beware of invisible spending, such as when you pop into a particular store for some milk and apples and leave with a trumpet and a ski suit. Now, I got to admit, I go to that shop and I come away with hardware. That's my big thing. I normally come away with hardware. Last week, I came away with a new security system for my home. But I'll tell you now, shop around, because I can tell you there are bargains to be had when you go out there. And this particular store, exactly the same items are 40 to 50% cheaper than if you go to the two big guys. And so I'm simply saying, you may think there's no choice, but just go for a little bit further of a walk to maybe not quite so convenient a car park, but guess what? You can save yourself a lot of money. I have a family of 5 adults, Philippa, 5. Okay, 3 kids that are 29, 27 and 24. My daughter doesn't eat so much, but my boys, man, they can eat. So we're always on the hunt for a bargain. So, Philippa, what other kind of things do you tell the ladies that come on your course around little, hacks, as they love calling them? I call them tips, but no, we're in the modern era, we have to call them a hack. Okay, so what kind of hacks do you have?
Well, interestingly enough, women congregate as communities, and there are communities all over Facebook that are devoted to people sharing things that save them money, ways of doing things that save time, products that work. And they have women that, if they're a whole group, if you just type that sort of thing into your Facebook browser, a whole lot of these community groups come up, and they share all those little tips. And women help each other out, because they're all trying to. And Westpac found, 30 years ago, that women are 85% the purchasing deciders in the family. So all those finance decisions are made by women. So your day-to-day decisions, and women pay the bills. They know how much it's going up. And so join any of those Facebook groups, the cleaning groups, women who clean or mums who clean, that sort of thing.
Sure.
And
because that's their little side hustle as well, isn't it?
Well, no, what they do is they find something in Kmart, use it for something completely different, and say, hey, this really works. And they put it up on these Facebook groups. So everybody goes off and tries it and comes back with their feedback. So there's a whole lot of support out there for women around budgeting, in terms of people who have tried different things. Sometimes in my Apple news feed, there are articles about a $9 thing from Kmart does X, Y, Z. It's a real hack. And next thing you know, everybody's out there trying it.
Well, I have to say, I've seen the same thing around vinegar. vinegar is this modern marvel that you can pick up for $1.20 for a litre or 2 litres, I think.
Yeah,
You can pick up
it cleans everything.
It cleans the whole works, you know. Window, don't worry about any of that other stuff. Just you use vinegar.
You know what?
It's brilliant.
In my mother's day, in the old days, they had newspapers, but these days they don't. And you put a splash of vinegar in some water and it cleans glass. It's acetic acid.
Funny
And
you say that.
just think, lemon juice, which is citric acid, cleans everything in your kitchen.
Certainly
and that's
does.
what we had when we were kids. Sunlight soap, some acetic acid, which is your vinegar. Don't use white vinegar, use proper vinegar. And sunlight soap, all those simple clean. Bicarb soda is another cleaning agent.
Tell you,
And
Philippa,
it's only
you're
the
doing my
10.
head in. You've been naming all these brands that we normally don't mention, but anyway, we'll let it go.
I'm just saying,
no,
acetic acid is vinegar, citric acid is lemon juice.
sure.
So all of those
that's a
cleaning
great
brands
tip.
that you use have chemicals in them. But when we were kids, and they didn't have the chemical compositions. In fact, Dad, when he was still alive, when all of this stuff came in with all the pump action chemicals, he said, this is going to be a real problem because they're all made from oil. And so all the chemicals that you spray around the place and the cleaning products that you use, when you check the label, there is nothing natural about them.
Hydrocarbons.
Yes.
So look, we need to wrap up because we're just about out of time again. Goes very, very quickly, doesn't it? So look, we've mentioned Money Smart. We're going to put the link in our blogs, ladies and gentlemen. Philippa, it's always great to talk about budgeting because these are the things that are near and dear to your heart and what you're doing at Wise Girls Money Magic, and certainly what I'm doing here at Dollars and Making Sense. And so from that perspective, ladies and gentlemen, great resource. Philippa Hunt, always really nice to chat to you. We've got to get back on and keep talking about this because I think it's really, really important that we help people plan. It's good stuff. Philippa Hunt, thanks so kindly for being on Dollars and Making Sense.
Thank you, Ray. Always a pleasure.
Cheers. Until next time.